What if I told you there are objects on this earth, artifacts so enigmatic, so impossible, that they defy everything we know about history, science, and reality itself? Hidden in dusty archives, locked behind museum vaults, or whispered about in secret circles, these items seem to carry a power, a story, or a knowledge that humanity was never meant to uncover. Some of these relics challenge the boundaries of time. Others hint at civilizations far older, or far stranger than we could ever imagine. And a few have left experts baffled, their existence sparking debates that echo through the halls of academia and the shadows of conspiracy alike. Each one raises a question we can't easily answer. Who created it? Why was it hidden? And perhaps most unsettling of all, what happens if it falls into the wrong hands? Tonight, we'll journey into the hidden corners of history, unearthing 10 forbidden artifacts that shouldn't exist, yet somehow do. Brace yourself for the strange, the inexplicable, and the downright chilling. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into the unknown. In the quiet stillness of a museum gallery in Piacenza, Italy, a small bronze object rests under the soft glow of protective lighting. At first glance, it is unassuming, roughly the size of a human hand, curved, with lines etched deep into its surface. But this is no ordinary artifact. This is the Etruscan liver of Piacenza, an object that has captivated historians, archaeologists, and curious minds for over a century. Its form is unmistakably modeled after the liver of a sheep, a key organ in the practice of haruspicy, the ancient Etruscan art of divination. Every groove, every inscription tells a story, though much of that story remains frustratingly out of reach. The liver is divided into 16 distinct sections, each labeled with the name of an Etruscan deity. Scholars have long theorized that priests used this bronze replica as a guide to interpret the will of the gods, reading the omens in the organs of sacrificial animals. The precision of its design suggests a culture that took divination seriously, an intricate intersection of religion, ritual, and early scientific observation. Yet as precise as it appears, questions abound. How did the Etruscans decide which deity governed which section of the liver? Why was this specific organ, above all others, chosen as a cosmic map? The artifact was unearthed in 1877 near the city of Piacenza, along with other Etruscan relics from the Iron Age. Its discovery immediately sparked fascination across Europe. Scholars noted its craftsmanship. Not only was it functional, but it was also symbolic, a miniature representation of the universe itself, or at least of the Etruscan understanding of it. The liver served as both a tool and a map, connecting the mortal realm to the divine. Yet, despite decades of study, no consensus has emerged on its exact use, leaving a space for speculation as wide and dark as the centuries that separate us from its creators. Some theories suggest that the liver may have been more than a guide for priests. Could it have functioned as an early astronomical chart, encoding celestial knowledge in its carefully carved divisions? Others propose that the liver of Piacenza represents a kind of moral compass, a way to align human action with divine expectation, its metallic surface a mirror for contemplation as much as divination. Its survival in bronze hints at intentionality, something meant to last, perhaps to teach or to preserve knowledge lost in time. Yet the most compelling aspect of the liver is not its practical function, but its enduring mystery. The Etruscan language is only partially understood, and the inscriptions on the liver remain enigmatic. Each deity's name is a window into a belief system that is fundamentally alien to us, a puzzle of divine hierarchy, ritual precision, and cosmic symbolism. We can hypothesize, reconstruct, and model, but we are still interpreting through the lens of our modern understanding. And in doing so, we confront a humbling reality. The world of the Etruscans remains partially hidden, like a shadow behind bronze. Even more intriguing are the inconsistencies. Similar livers found elsewhere, though fragmentary, do not match perfectly with the Piacenza specimen. This raises questions about standardization, ritual variation, and regional differences in Etruscan practice. Was this liver a master template, an exceptional artifact used by a particularly powerful priesthood? Or was it one of many, each subtly altered to reflect the local pantheon, the whims of a ruler, or the needs of a specific ceremony? These unanswered questions allow the object to linger between the categories of tool, symbol, and sacred object, defying a simple classification. Some modern researchers have drawn parallels to other ancient practices, noting similarities with Babylonian and Mesopotamian divination, and even with early Greek interpretations of sacrifice. These comparisons suggest a broader context, one in which the liver could be seen as part of a continuum of human attempts to impose order on chaos, to read meaning where it is neither obvious nor guaranteed. Yet the Etruscans remain unique in their approach, and the liver of Piacenza stands as an artifact that embodies both sophistication and secrecy, bridging the known and the unknowable. And there are whispers of even stranger interpretations. A few scholars speculate that the liver might encode a proto-scientific understanding of anatomy, a visual mnemonic to teach medical knowledge. Others venture that it may have been used for more clandestine purposes, a ritual device whose power was as much psychological as it was spiritual. While these ideas remain speculative, they underscore the artifact's capacity to provoke thought, imagination, and reverence. It is a reminder that history is not merely a collection of dates and facts, but a series of lived experiences, of beliefs and fears that shaped lives in ways we can barely comprehend. As we stand before the liver today, its smooth bronze surface worn by time yet preserved against centuries of decay, it continues to provoke a quiet awe. It is both familiar and alien, an object rooted in human practice, but floating beyond our complete understanding. Every line invites questions. Every inscription teases a meaning that may be just out of reach. How did the Etruscans perceive the divine? What did they hope to gain by consulting the liver? And perhaps most unsettling of all, what do we still fail to see, hidden in the folds of history and bronze? The liver of Piacenza reminds us that not all knowledge is meant to be fully recovered, and not every mystery will yield its secrets easily. It sits in silence, an artifact of devotion, of ritual, and of curiosity, whispering across millennia. What we do know is only a fragment of a larger picture, a puzzle we may never complete. And perhaps that is precisely what makes it so compelling. A reminder that history is alive not only in what we can explain, but also in what continues to elude us. From the quiet bronze of the Etruscan liver, we move across continents and centuries to a far more delicate artifact, yet one no less enigmatic, the Maya Dresden Codex. Unlike the solid permanence of bronze, the Dresden Codex is fragile, crafted from folded bark paper coated with lime and painted with vibrant pigments that have survived over 500 years. The pages, each roughly 8 inches wide, are filled with intricate glyphs, detailed calendars, and strikingly colorful illustrations of deities, rituals, and celestial events. It is a book, yet it feels alive, as if the hand of a priest, long vanished into history, had just lifted it from its shelf. The Dresden Codex is one of only 4 pre-Columbian Maya codices known to exist today, and its survival is nothing short of miraculous. Most Maya writings were destroyed during the conquest and the campaigns of cultural erasure that followed. This manuscript traveled from the heart of Mesoamerica to Europe, eventually finding refuge in the Royal Library of Dresden, Germany, where it gained its modern name. And yet, even in this distant library, the Codex retains a sense of its original sacred context. Its pages are not merely decorative, they are functional, encoding knowledge about astronomy, ritual cycles, and prophecy, guiding decisions that governed the lives of entire city-states. At first glance, the content of the Codex seems astonishingly precise. The Maya were able to predict eclipses, map Venus's cycles, and construct complex calendrical systems with a rigor that rivals modern calculations. Every page demonstrates the interweaving of the mundane and the divine, agricultural guidance alongside cosmic events, ritual observances aligned with planetary motion. Scholars have spent centuries attempting to decode these inscriptions, and while much is understood, the Codex retains a stubborn opacity. The language of the Maya is partially deciphered, yet the purpose of certain tables, the meaning behind certain deities, and the intentions of their creators remain elusive. Some researchers suggest that the Codex was a practical tool for priests, a guidebook to ensure harmony between human activity and cosmic order. Others propose that it may have served as a medium for prophecy, offering glimpses into cycles of time far beyond human lifespan. And then there are the more speculative interpretations, that the Codex encodes lost knowledge, perhaps of mathematics or astronomy, which exceeds what we have reconstructed today. Could it be that the Maya observed phenomena that modern science only now begins to comprehend? Or were the codices simply a sophisticated cultural framework, their power lying not in their predictive ability, but in the authority they conferred upon those who wielded them? What makes the Dresden Codex particularly compelling is its portrayal of Venus. Across multiple pages, the planet is tracked with astonishing precision, its movements predicting eclipses, warfare, and sacred rituals. It is a meticulous record, one that demonstrates an understanding of cycles and patterns that challenge our assumptions about pre-Columbian knowledge. Yet, as precise as it is, there are anomalies, sections where the calculations seem symbolic or intentionally obscure, as if designed to confound or protect. Why would the Maya embed these complexities? Was it purely practical, or did they intend to encode layers of meaning accessible only to the initiated? Beyond its scientific and ritualistic aspects, the Dresden Codex is a visual marvel. Gods and goddesses leap across the pages, their hands and eyes in constant motion, their presence a reminder that Maya writing was never purely textual. It was performative, imbued with spiritual significance. Every glyph, every illustration carries a dual purpose, to convey information and to embody sacred authority. The Codex is at once a record, a tool, and an object of devotion, a testament to a worldview in which the celestial and terrestrial were inseparable. Yet the Codex also raises questions that remain frustratingly unanswered. How were these books produced with such precision in an era before printing technology? What prompted the selection of the events, deities, and cycles that fill its pages? And why, of the thousands of potential codices, have only 4 survived the ravages of time, conquest, and cultural destruction? The survival of the Dresden Codex feels almost like a deliberate act of preservation, or perhaps an accident of history that gives us only a fragment of a once vast body of knowledge. Some modern scholars venture further, suggesting that the Codex may reflect a unique way of perceiving time itself. Unlike the linear chronology we are accustomed to, the Maya conceived of time as cyclical, overlapping, and interdependent. Their history, their prophecy, and their science were interwoven into a single dynamic fabric. Could this perspective offer insights we have yet to fully appreciate? Are we reading the Codex as a relic of the past, or might it still hold lessons about the patterns of time, cycles of nature, and the alignment of human life with the cosmos? As we trace the folds of the Dresden Codex, leaf by leaf, we encounter both clarity and ambiguity. Its brilliance is undeniable, yet it retains an aura of mystery that no scholar has fully unraveled. It is a bridge between worlds, the ancient and the modern, the human and the divine, the observable and the incomprehensible. and it reminds us that some knowledge, even when documented and preserved, can remain tantalizingly out of reach. In the quiet of the Dresden library, the Codex lies in its protective case, its vibrant colors muted under soft light, yet its presence is undeniable. What did the Maya hope to preserve within these pages? What patterns of life, of ritual, of cosmic order might still elude our understanding? And as we continue our journey through the artifacts that should not exist, the Dresden Codex invites us to pause and wonder. How much of human knowledge has survived by chance, and how much remains hidden, waiting for those willing to look closely enough to see? As we leave behind the vibrant pages of the Dresden Codex, with its celestial calculations and divine illustrations, we journey even further back in time to a civilization that flourished millennia before the Maya, along the fertile plains of the Indus River. Here, scattered across the ruins of Harappa, Mohenjo-Daro, and other urban centers of the Indus Valley, lie thousands of small, enigmatic objects, stone seals no larger than a human palm, yet brimming with significance. Each is meticulously carved, often depicting animals, human-like figures, or geometric patterns, accompanied by inscriptions that remain largely undeciphered. The Indus Valley seals are remarkable for their uniformity and precision. Crafted from steatite, a soft stone that hardens when fired, these seals were likely used as stamps or amulets, impressions pressed into clay or wax. Their designs are complex, with detailed depictions of bulls, elephants, rhinoceroses, and the occasional mythical creature. One of the most famous motifs is the so-called Pashupati seal, portraying a horned, seated figure surrounded by animals, evocative of spiritual or ritual authority. Scholars have long debated the purpose of these seals. Were they administrative tools, religious talismans, markers of property, or something else entirely? Despite decades of excavation and study, the Indus script remains largely undeciphered, a mystery that has kept the seals shrouded in ambiguity. The symbols are short, repetitive, and yet tantalizingly patterned, suggesting a written system, but one that resists our attempts at translation. How did a civilization so advanced in urban planning, trade, and water management maintain a written language that we can scarcely understand today? What knowledge, what governance, or what spiritual truths were embedded in these tiny carved stones? Some researchers suggest that the seals were primarily utilitarian, functioning as a sophisticated system for commerce and communication. Impressions in clay may have marked goods, contracts, or trade agreements, a precursor to modern accounting. Others propose a deeper, more symbolic role. Perhaps the animals and figures carved into the seals conveyed stories, mythologies, or religious beliefs, a way to encode cultural knowledge that could be read by those initiated into their meaning. The repetition of certain symbols hints at a ritual dimension, a deliberate effort to preserve continuity across generations. Yet the more we study these artifacts, the more questions emerge. How did the Indus people standardize the size, shape, and motifs of the seals across hundreds of miles of settlements? Could there have been a centralized authority, or was this uniformity the result of shared cultural norms? And why, if these seals were so essential, has so little direct evidence survived about the civilization that produced them? Unlike the codices of the Maya, we have no monumental texts or narratives to guide our understanding. Only these small, silent witnesses to a long-vanished world. The seals also provoke speculation that reaches beyond the pragmatic. Some have suggested that the imagery may encode astronomical knowledge, tracking cycles of the moon or patterns in the stars, much as the Dresden Codex did centuries later. Could these tiny stones have been a form of proto-science? A tangible record of observations and correlations that linked human society to the cosmos? Others point to the Pashupati figure and wonder whether the Indus Valley had a proto-religion, one that influenced later Vedic traditions in ways we can only glimpse through these silent artifacts. What remains particularly striking is the sheer sophistication of the seals in relation to the mystery that surrounds them. Cities like Mohenjo-Daro were marvels of urban planning, with grid patterns, drainage systems, and standardized bricks. Yet the civilization left no decipherable literature or monumental inscriptions. The seals, with their compact but intricate symbolism, are one of the few direct connections we have to their intellectual and spiritual world. In them, we see a people who were highly organized, deeply observant, and yet curiously inscrutable, a paradox that continues to fascinate archaeologists and historians alike. Even the distribution of the seals adds to the intrigue. Found not only in major urban centers, but also in distant settlements and along trade routes, they suggest a network of communication and influence that spanned vast distances. Were these seals a common language of commerce, a marker of authority, or an instrument of ritual power? The lack of definitive answers leaves the Indus Valley suspended between the known and the unknowable, a civilization whose daily life we can reconstruct in broad strokes, but whose inner world remains tantalizingly elusive. Some modern interpretations even hint at connections across continents, suggesting that the precision and symbolic complexity of the Indus seals might resonate with practices in contemporary or later civilizations, from Mesopotamia to the Maya. Could there be a shared human impulse to encode knowledge, power, and belief into portable objects across time and space? Or is this coincidence, a reflection of parallel ingenuity emerging independently in separate societies? As we study these small, silent artifacts, their meaning continues to elude us, and perhaps that is their greatest testament. The Indus Valley seals endure not merely as historical curiosities, but as invitations to wonder, to imagine, and to confront the limits of our understanding. What did these tiny stones communicate to their original bearers? What knowledge, power, or ritual significance did they hold? And what might still be hidden in the sands of time, waiting for discovery or comprehension? In their quiet, measured presence, the Indus Valley seals remind us that some of history's greatest achievements were designed to communicate, yet not to reveal fully. They speak in a language we are still learning to read, a bridge between past and present that challenges our assumptions and beckons us to look deeper into the mysteries of a civilization that should have been lost, yet continues to reach across millennia. From the small enigmatic seals of the Indus Valley, we shift our gaze to a far more monumental artifact, yet one that, like its predecessors, carries both clarity and ambiguity. Resting behind the glass of the British Museum, the Cyrus Cylinder is a modest object in size, a clay cylinder, only about 8 inches long, but its impact is far larger than its physical form. Its surface is inscribed with cuneiform text, meticulously impressed into soft clay, detailing events from more than 2.5 millennia ago. And yet, despite the precise lines of script, it is an artifact whose meaning, context, and influence continue to inspire debate. The cylinder was created under the rule of Cyrus the Great, the Persian king who conquered Babylon in 539 BCE. It chronicles his conquest, his approach to governance, and his policies of restoring displaced peoples and rebuilding temples across the empire. At first glance, it reads as a straightforward royal proclamation, a statement of power, legitimacy, and benevolence. But the language and phrasing are layered, carefully chosen to convey authority while appealing to a wide spectrum of cultural, religious, and political audiences. Historians have long studied the Cyrus Cylinder as a remarkable early example of political communication, an artifact that blends administration, ideology, and narrative in a single, portable form. Yet beyond its immediate historical context, the cylinder has inspired far-reaching interpretations. Some scholars have likened it to an early charter of human rights, citing Cyrus's proclamations of freedom of worship and repatriation of exiled communities. Others caution against projecting modern concepts onto ancient texts, emphasizing that its primary purpose may have been pragmatic: to legitimize conquest, appease conquered populations, and stabilize a sprawling empire. The cylinder's journey to our own time adds another layer of intrigue. Discovered in the ruins of Babylon in 1879, it has since been transported, studied, and displayed across continents. Its survival is almost miraculous. Fired and preserved in clay, yet vulnerable to centuries of conflict, looting, and decay. And in its careful preservation, it offers a tangible connection to a world long vanished, a culture that governed, negotiated, and recorded its triumphs with deliberate precision. Yet, as with the Indus seals and the Dresden Codex, the Cyrus Cylinder resists full comprehension. Its inscriptions, while translated, reveal only fragments of a larger story. What prompted Cyrus to adopt this particular approach to governance? Were these declarations purely political strategy, sincere acts of cultural tolerance, or both? And how much of what we understand today is filtered through centuries of interpretation, bias, and selective preservation? The cylinder also raises questions about identity, memory, and power. By framing his conquest in terms of restoration and benevolence, Cyrus positioned himself as a legitimate successor to the rulers he displaced. Was this approach unique, or part of a broader tradition of diplomacy and propaganda in the ancient Near East? Could there be connections between the language of rulership recorded here and other civilizations' approaches from Mesopotamia to the Indus Valley? And if so, what does that suggest about the transmission of political and cultural knowledge across time and geography? Some more speculative interpretations hint at broader implications. The cylinder's emphasis on order, restitution, and respect for local traditions has been seen by some as evidence of an early, conscious philosophy of governance, an attempt to balance authority with moral responsibility. Was Cyrus aware of the long-term consequences of these policies, or was this an ad hoc approach to maintaining control over a diverse empire? And might there be aspects of these decisions that we can only glimpse indirectly through the gaps between what is recorded and what is left unsaid? Physically, the cylinder itself is unassuming. A smooth, rounded piece of clay, its surface warm with age, each line of cuneiform pressed with exacting care. Yet it radiates a quiet power, the kind that comes not from size or spectacle, but from the depth of its implications. It is an artifact of influence, of governance, and of cultural memory, a small object that reaches far beyond its immediate context, connecting us to the ambitions, beliefs, and strategies of a ruler who sought to shape history itself. And yet, even as we study the cylinder, questions remain. How fully can we reconstruct the intentions of a king who lived 25 centuries ago? How much of history is preserved in objects like this, and how much has been lost, leaving only tantalizing traces? What unseen contexts, negotiations, or motivations shaped the text, and how might that knowledge alter our understanding of this artifact today? The Cyrus Cylinder reminds us that even the most carefully recorded history carries shadows of uncertainty. It is both a document and a symbol, a bridge between the ancient world and our own, urging us to consider not only what was preserved, but what was omitted. As we continue our journey through artifacts that challenge our understanding, it invites us to pause and reflect. How much of human ambition, ingenuity, and influence is captured in the objects that survive, and how much remains hidden, waiting to be rediscovered or reinterpreted? From the carefully impressed lines of the Cyrus Cylinder, we now turn our attention to a far older, more enigmatic creation, one that predates written history itself. Deep in the Ural Mountains of Russia, buried in the peat bogs of Shigir, lies an artifact that has challenged archaeologists and historians alike: the Shigir Idol. Standing over 7 meters tall in its reconstructed form, it is the oldest known wooden sculpture in the world. Its weathered cedar surface preserved for nearly 12,000 years by the unique acidity and low oxygen of the peat. Yet it is not merely its age that captivates, it is the sheer strangeness and intentionality of its design. The Shigir Idol is covered with a series of geometric motifs, zigzags, chevrons, and deeply carved faces that seem to peer across millennia. Its body is segmented, with enigmatic symbols arranged in vertical bands, suggesting a language or system of communication long forgotten. Scholars have debated its purpose for decades. Was it a totem, a map, a ritual object, or a representation of deities or ancestors? And if so, what beliefs or fears did it embody in a world where humans were still hunter-gatherers, their societies only beginning to take shape? The craftsmanship is astonishing. Each line and groove was carved with care, reflecting not only skill, but also intention. The wood, chosen for its resilience and longevity, speaks to a consciousness of time, as if the creator sought to leave a message or presence that would endure far beyond their own lifetime. In this sense, the Shigir Idol is both an artistic and spiritual statement, bridging the gap between the human and the divine, the tangible and the mysterious. Archaeologists have noted that the carvings bear recurring motifs, possibly representing humans, spirits, or symbolic entities, but the true meaning remains elusive. Unlike the inscriptions on the Cyrus Cylinder, which can be translated and contextualized, the symbols of the Shigir Idol resist conventional interpretation. Could this have been an early form of storytelling, a record of myth and memory encoded in wood? Or might it have served as a marker, a territorial or ceremonial object designed to communicate across the landscape to other human groups? The age of the idol only deepens the mystery. Radiocarbon dating places its creation around 9,600 BCE, a time when most human societies were nomadic, still adapting to the aftermath of the Ice Age. How did people of this era conceive of such an elaborate, monumental artifact? What beliefs or visions drove them to invest so much labor into a sculpture that towers over us even today? And how did the peat bogs, by some extraordinary stroke of nature, preserve it in such remarkable condition, allowing us to witness a fragment of thought, ritual, and artistry from a world that seems almost unimaginably distant? Some researchers speculate that the idol may have functioned as a cosmological object, a representation of the universe or the cycles of nature as perceived by its creators. Others suggest it could have been a spiritual intermediary, a physical manifestation of ancestral or supernatural beings, designed to inspire awe, communicate with unseen forces, or guide communal rites. There are even theories that the geometric patterns represent a proto-writing system, a symbolic language that has been lost to time, hinting at intellectual and spiritual sophistication far earlier than previously assumed. Yet, for all these theories, the Shigir Idol retains its capacity to confound. Its presence suggests a people with complex social and spiritual structures, capable of abstract thought, artistic expression, and long-term planning. It reminds us that our ancestors, even in the deep past, were capable of profound creativity and symbolic communication, skills we often associate only with later, more advanced civilizations. The idol is a silent witness to human ingenuity, and yet its true story remains locked within the grooves of its carved surface. There are also questions about its discovery and preservation that add to its enigmatic aura. Unearthed in 1890 by miners, the idol was fragmented, with many sections separated and partially decayed. Over the decades, careful conservation has allowed us to reconstruct its stature and symbolism, but we are left with gaps, physical, contextual, and interpretive. What stories have been lost to the peat? How much of its meaning can ever be recovered, and how much will remain forever speculative? The Shigir Idol's scale, age, and intricacy invite reflection on humanity's earliest impulses toward creation, representation, and connection with forces beyond immediate perception. It raises questions that are at once archaeological, spiritual, and philosophical. What drove our ancestors to craft objects of such ambition? How did they perceive the world around them, and what messages did they hope to leave for the generations that would follow? As we stand, figuratively, before the Shigir Idol today, it evokes both awe and humility. It is a reminder that the desire to communicate, to leave traces of thought and belief, is a fundamental part of what it means to be human. And yet, its mysteries endure, locked in wood, etched in patterns whose meaning may forever elude us. What did the creators hope to say? What truths about life, death, and the cosmos did they encode in this towering figure? And what might we still learn if we could listen, not just with our eyes, but with the same imagination and wonder that guided the hands of those who carved it nearly 12,000 years ago? From the towering, enigmatic form of the Shigir Idol, we now journey southward, across continents and millennia, to the ancient plains of the Levant, where one of humanity's earliest and most haunting artistic achievements waits quietly in the archaeological record: the stoneheads of Ain Ghazal. Nestled in what is now modern-day Jordan, the Neolithic settlement of Ain Ghazal flourished around 7,250 to 5,000 BCE, its mud brick houses and communal structures hinting at a society capable of extraordinary organization and cultural sophistication. Among the most compelling remnants of this civilization are nearly 15 life-sized statues, their faces meticulously sculpted from lime plaster and reed frameworks, some adorned with bitumen inlays to highlight eyes, while others remain starkly white, their blank expressions both intimate and alien. At first glance, these statues are arresting for their realism. The contours of the cheeks, the proportions of the eyes, the delicate shaping of the mouths suggest an intimate understanding of human anatomy. Yet there is something profoundly unsettling about them. Their expressions are frozen, hauntingly impassive, as if the gaze of each figure is fixed beyond the present, looking toward a realm we cannot access. Scholars often describe the effect as simultaneously familiar and otherworldly, a feeling that these statues were meant to embody more than mere human likeness, to transcend mortality, to serve as vessels of memory, identity, or even spiritual presence. The technical sophistication of these artifacts is remarkable, constructed from layers of plaster applied over carefully bound reed cores. The statues were molded, sculpted, and sometimes painted with incredible precision. The largest examples stand nearly 3/4 of a meter tall, while smaller ones capture minute details in miniature. Each is unique, yet collectively they form a coherent tradition of representation, suggesting standardized practices or shared symbolic meanings. Unlike small figurines found elsewhere in the Neolithic Near East, these statues were monumental, clearly designed for permanence, ritual, or commemoration. But what exactly was that purpose? Some researchers propose that the statues functioned as ancestral effigies, embodiments of the dead preserved within the community, to maintain a link between past and present. In a world where mortality was omnipresent and life was fragile, the act of immortalizing human features in stone and plaster could have been a means of preserving identity, continuity, and social cohesion. Yet, the scale and elaboration of these heads suggest something more than mere commemoration. Could they have served as intermediaries between the living and the divine, conduits for ritual communication or protection? Or were they instruments of social authority, symbols of leadership, lineage, or communal memory, intended to reinforce hierarchy or shared identity? Despite their apparent realism, the statues contain deliberate ambiguities. Many lack complete bodies. Some are only partial torsos, while others are fragmented, yet they were carefully modeled and preserved. Some faces show signs of intentional alteration or reworking, suggesting that the statues were dynamic objects, continually updated or adapted to suit changing cultural or ritual needs. The eyes, often inlaid with bitumen, seem to convey awareness and presence, and in certain examples, the gaze is slightly misaligned, a subtle detail that could indicate a symbolic intention rather than a simple desire for realism. The context of their discovery deepens the intrigue. Unearthed in the 1980s during excavations led by archaeologist Gary Rolifson, the statues were found in pits beneath residential structures, deliberately buried, often in clusters. This suggests that their placement was highly intentional and possibly ritualistic. Were these statues retired after serving a particular function? Were they hidden to protect their power or interred as part of a ceremonial cycle? The act of burial itself implies an awareness of their potency, a recognition that these objects were more than inert representations, that they carried meaning or force beyond the mundane. Some speculative interpretations venture further, proposing that the stone heads of Ghazal may reflect early explorations of selfhood, identity, and the metaphysical. Could these figures represent not only ancestors but also collective archetypes, projections of community ideals, or even proto-psychological concepts of consciousness and personhood? In a society without writing, such physical embodiments of identity may have functioned as a form of nonverbal communication, encoding memory, social rules, or cosmological understanding in a tangible, persistent medium. Others draw attention to possible links between the heads and ritual practices involving fertility, agriculture, or seasonal cycles. In a Neolithic world where survival depended on successful harvests and the cyclical rhythms of nature, these statues may have embodied abstract forces, spiritual guardianship, or appeasement of unseen powers. Yet, despite decades of excavation and analysis, definitive evidence remains scarce, leaving the statues suspended between the known and the speculative. What makes these statues particularly compelling is the scale of ambition they represent. Thousands of years before the first written records of civilization, communities of Ghazal were not merely surviving. They were creating objects of enduring symbolic power, encoding complex ideas about identity, memory, and perhaps even cosmology in plaster and stone. Their preservation, often in disjointed fragments, offers glimpses into a society that was sophisticated, reflective, and deeply engaged with existential questions. And yet, as with the Shigir Idol, the full significance of these objects eludes us. Even today, the stone heads provoke a sense of disquieting wonder. Their blank, inlaid eyes meet our gaze across millennia, silent witnesses to practices, beliefs, and social structures we can only partially reconstruct. They ask questions we may never fully answer. What prompted a society to invest such care and effort into the creation of these effigies? How did the people of Ghazal understand identity, memory, and the spiritual world? And how much of their knowledge, ritual, and intention remains hidden in the subtle lines and textures of plaster, waiting for discovery, or perhaps forever lost to time? In standing before these heads, even indirectly through photographs or reconstructions, we sense a dialogue across ages, a connection that transcends written history, language, and culture. They are not merely objects of curiosity. They are vessels of human thought, ambition, and imagination, reminding us that even in the earliest chapters of our shared past, humans were compelled to create, to represent, and to question. The stone heads of Ghazal endure as a testament to this impulse, a haunting and beautiful reminder that some of the most profound mysteries lie not in texts or temples, but in the careful shaping of material by hands long vanished from the earth. As we leave the ancient Levant, carrying the image of these silent, staring figures, we are left with an enduring question. What other dimensions of human experience, ritual, and imagination were encoded in these early communities, yet remain beyond our understanding? How much of the intangible world, the beliefs, fears, and aspirations of people living 10,000 years ago, can survive in stone, plaster, and memory? And in contemplating the stone heads of Ghazal, we are reminded that some mysteries are not meant to be solved entirely, but to inspire reflection, wonder, and a deep respect for the ingenuity of our earliest ancestors. From the silent, staring faces of the stone heads of Ghazal, we now shift our gaze to a much smaller, yet equally enigmatic object, one that emerges from the sands of Egypt and seems to whisper of ingenuity and imagination far ahead of its time: the Saqqara Bird. Discovered in 1898 within a tomb at Saqqara, this small, 14-centimeter wooden artifact resembles a bird with outstretched wings, carved with simple, elegant lines, yet possessing a design that has perplexed historians, engineers, and archaeologists for more than a century. Its form is delicate, almost fragile, yet there is a precision in its balance and curvature that suggests a purpose beyond mere ornamentation. The artifact was found in the tomb of Padi Imen, an Egyptian official from the late period, and initially catalogued as a toy or ceremonial object. Yet its aerodynamic features, the curved wings, the tapered tail, and the streamlined body, have led some to propose a more extraordinary function. Could this modest wooden carving have been an early experiment in flight, a glider or model aircraft conceived thousands of years before the principles of aerodynamics were formally understood? While mainstream archaeology cautions against projecting modern technology onto ancient objects, the possibility invites a provocative line of inquiry. What knowledge, intuition, or experimentation might the Egyptians have possessed in the realms of engineering, observation, or applied physics? The Saqqara Bird is composed of sycamore wood, with a wingspan slightly longer than its body, and no evidence of propulsion or complex mechanisms. Yet, when tested in modern experiments, models replicating its dimensions and form demonstrate stable gliding properties. The artifact's simple elegance becomes all the more remarkable in this context. A small object, designed with minimal material, yet potentially capable of demonstrating principles of flight. Was this the product of playful experimentation, an artistic abstraction inspired by the natural world, or evidence of a practical curiosity that has been lost to time? Some researchers suggest that the bird may have held symbolic or ritual significance, as birds often appear in Egyptian iconography as messengers of the gods or symbols of the soul's journey after death. Its placement in a tomb could indicate a spiritual purpose, perhaps guiding the deceased's spirit or offering protection. Could it be that the artifact served both as a symbolic object and as a model, a way to explore the intersection of sacred and empirical knowledge? And if so, what does that reveal about the Egyptians' understanding of the natural world and their willingness to experiment within it? The questions surrounding the Saqqara Bird are further compounded by its historical context. This artifact emerges from a period when Egyptian artisans were masters of geometry, measurement, and structural precision, as evidenced by monumental architecture such as the pyramids and the intricacies of tomb reliefs. Could it be that a culture so capable of monumental engineering also explored smaller-scale experiments in mechanics, flight, or material behavior? Or is the resemblance to an aerodynamic object merely coincidental, a testament to human pattern recognition applied retrospectively? Speculative interpretations have suggested connections to much later technologies, prompting debates that reach into the realms of forbidden or anomalous knowledge. Some have posited that ancient civilizations may have explored the principles of flight long before Leonardo da Vinci or the Wright brothers, leaving behind tantalizing traces such as this bird. Yet these ideas remain controversial, primarily because the artifact alone cannot conclusively demonstrate functional flight, and therein lies the enduring mystery. The Saqqara Bird challenges our assumptions about technological development and the timeline of human curiosity without providing definitive answers. The artifact also invites reflection on human imagination and observation. Even if it was never intended to fly, the Saqqara Bird reflects a careful study of the natural world, an attention to form and function, and a willingness to experiment with ideas in tangible form. It is a reminder that ingenuity does not always appear in expected ways, and that even small, overlooked objects can reveal a depth of thought that resonates across millennia. Its existence prompts us to consider what other experiments, concepts, or knowledge may have been lost, hidden, or transformed by the passage of time. In examining the Saqqara Bird today, we are struck by its duality, both simple and profound, ordinary and extraordinary. Its wings, carved with care, seem to hover between the worlds of art, ritual, and proto-technology. It challenges us to imagine the minds that shaped it, the hands that held it, and the ideas it may have embodied. Did it represent a playful curiosity, a spiritual symbol, or the first flicker of scientific inquiry in the realm of flight? And if so, what does that suggest about the broader capabilities of ancient societies, their engagement with natural principles, and their vision for what humans might achieve? The Saqqara Bird, in its quiet, unassuming form, continues to provoke thought, inspire experimentation, and invite speculation. Its discovery reminds us that history is filled with objects that defy easy explanation, artifacts that exist at the threshold of understanding, poised between known purpose and enduring mystery. As we reflect on this small wooden bird, we are left with an open question. What knowledge, creativity, or insight did our ancestors possess that has been lost to time? And how many other objects like the Saqqara Bird may still lie hidden, waiting to challenge our perceptions of human history? From the small, enigmatic wooden form of the Saqqara Bird, with its potential whispers of early experimentation in flight, we now turn to a different kind of object, one that invites us to consider the intersection of craftsmanship, perception, and ancient science: the crystal lens of Nimrud. Excavated in the 1850s from the ruins of the Assyrian city of Nimrud, in what is now northern Iraq, this artifact is a piece of rock crystal, roughly an inch across, carved into a slightly convex shape and polished to a smooth finish. At first glance, it appears unremarkable, almost fragile, yet the clarity of the crystal and the precision of its shape suggest a deliberate purpose, one that challenges assumptions about the technological capabilities of the Neo-Assyrian Empire nearly 3,000 years ago. The lens was discovered in the palace of Ashurnasirpal II, amid a collection of exquisite jewelry, seals, and decorative objects. Its placement alongside items of ceremonial and practical importance hints at a significance that goes beyond mere ornamentation. Scholars have long debated its function. Some propose it was a magnifying tool, used for inspecting fine details in inscriptions, gemstones, or artistic work. Others suggest a more ambitious possibility, that it may have been intended as a component of early optical devices, or even as a lens for concentrating sunlight, though such uses remain speculative. What makes the crystal lens particularly compelling is its precision. Rock crystal is notoriously difficult to work with, yet this piece is smooth, symmetrical, and slightly curved, exhibiting a level of craftsmanship that implies both skill and knowledge of optical properties. Could the Assyrians have understood the principles of magnification even without formal optical theory? Did they experiment with light and focus in ways we are only beginning to appreciate, leaving behind artifacts that hint at an advanced understanding of material properties? Some researchers argue that the lens may have been primarily symbolic, serving as a prestige object to convey authority, knowledge, or divine favor. In a palace setting, objects often had layered significance, both functional and ceremonial. Perhaps the lens was a tool, a toy, or a symbol of insight, an emblem of clarity, vision, and intellectual power. And yet, as with many ancient artifacts, the true purpose is obscured by time and the fragmentary nature of the archaeological record. The artifact also invites broader questions about the potential scope of ancient technology. Assyria was a civilization renowned for its military prowess, engineering projects, and sophisticated administration. Could the crystal lens suggest a parallel sophistication in observational science or optical experimentation? Some have speculated about its possible use in enhancing carvings, inspecting tiny details in metalwork, or even starting fires using sunlight, though such interpretations remain controversial. What is clear is that the lens required intention, skill, and an understanding of how light interacts with a curved, polished surface. Equally intriguing is the context in which it was found. The lens was not isolated. It was part of a carefully curated collection of artifacts within the palace complex. This suggests that its creators valued it for more than simple decoration. Was it a practical implement, a ceremonial object, or a combination of both? And what does its presence in a royal setting tell us about the dissemination of specialized knowledge in ancient societies? Were certain skills and insights closely guarded, passed only to a select few within the court? The crystal lens also challenges assumptions about the linear progression of technology. In the modern world, optical theory is considered a product of centuries of systematic study. Yet here is evidence, in a polished fragment of crystal, that individuals in the first millennium BCE may have recognized the properties of light and magnification, even without formal mathematical frameworks. How much knowledge might have been experimented with and then lost, leaving behind tantalizing hints like this lens, whose function is clear in principle, but opaque in historical context. Some speculative interpretations even draw connections to later inventions, noting that lenses and magnifying devices would not reappear in widespread use for over a millennium. Could the Assyrians have developed proto-optical tools long before the formal study of lenses in classical or medieval science? And if so, what other forms of knowledge might have been explored, tested, or intentionally hidden in ways that leave only fragments like this crystal to spark our imagination? The lens itself is a quiet object, yet its presence is commanding. Its polished surface reflects light with subtle brilliance, and its curved form invites observation, experimentation, and reflection. It is an artifact that embodies the tension between what we can understand and what remains unknown. It forces us to ask not only about ancient technology, but about human curiosity itself, the impulse to explore, manipulate, and experiment with the physical world. In contemplating the crystal lens of Nimrud today, we are reminded that ancient civilizations were not merely surviving. They were thinking, observing, and shaping their environment with subtlety and sophistication. And yet, as with the Saqqara Bird, the Shigir Idol, or the stone heads of Ghazal, the artifact resists definitive explanation. Did it serve a practical function, a symbolic role, or both? How much knowledge has been lost to time, leaving behind only these tantalizing traces? And what other mysteries of perception, experimentation, and insight might ancient cultures have achieved, now hidden in the fragments of objects that have endured against all odds? The crystal lens of Nimrud, in its small, unassuming form, is a testament to curiosity, skill, and the human desire to understand the world. Its legacy challenges us to reconsider what ancient societies were capable of, and to remain open to the possibility that knowledge, ingenuity, and discovery existed far earlier and in forms far more subtle than we often imagine. In its quiet reflection of light, it casts a question across millennia. how many other secrets, insights, or innovations remain hidden, waiting to illuminate our understanding of the past? From the quiet reflection of the crystal lens of Nimrud, which whispers of ancient experimentation and subtle ingenuity, we now journey across time and space to the dense jungles of the Yucatan Peninsula, to the towering ruins of Calakmul, one of the greatest cities of the ancient Maya civilization. Hidden beneath a canopy of green, long abandoned to the rhythms of the forest, lie treasures that speak not only of wealth and artistry, but of mystery, ritual, and power, the jade masks of Calakmul. Unlike painted codices or wooden idols, these masks are carved from pure jade, their surfaces polished to a luminous sheen that seems to glow from within, catching the light and the imagination alike. The masks were discovered within the tombs of elite rulers, carefully arranged upon the faces and chests of the deceased. Some are life-sized, others smaller, but all are rendered with meticulous craftsmanship, smooth contours, precise inlays of shell or obsidian, and intricate patterns that suggest both symbolic meaning and aesthetic sophistication. The material itself, jadeite, quarried from distant highlands, was highly prized by the Maya, and its use signals the importance of the individuals they adorned. But beyond beauty, these masks hold a profound significance, for they were never merely decorative. They were designed to endure, to transform, and to transcend. Scholars have long interpreted the masks as funerary objects intended to guide the deceased through the afterlife, a tangible bridge between the world of the living and the spiritual realm. The placement over the face may have served as protection, or as a way to maintain identity and presence even after death. But the question remains: why jade? Was it merely a symbol of wealth and status, or did the Maya perceive in the stone a deeper power, a conduit for spiritual energy or cosmic alignment? The vivid green of jade, rare and unyielding, seems almost to pulse with life, suggesting that these masks were as much about essence and force as they were about appearance. What is particularly compelling is the technical mastery required to create these masks. Jadeite is one of the hardest minerals worked by human hands without modern tools. Each mask required hours, possibly months of labor using primitive abrasives, drilling, and polishing techniques. Such dedication speaks not only to the value of the material, but also to the significance of the object's purpose. Were these masks a form of ritual science, an attempt to control or preserve the power of the individual? Did they serve as symbolic keys to the cycles of life and death, or as instruments to communicate with deities who shaped fate itself? The discovery of multiple masks in Calakmul's tombs deepens the enigma. Some masks appear to replicate facial features, hinting at individuality, while others are stylized, abstract, or exaggerated, suggesting symbolic meaning that extends beyond physical likeness. Could these variations indicate different ritual roles, stages in the journey of the soul, or connections to particular gods or cosmic forces? And why do some masks appear almost eerily lifelike, while others are deliberately otherworldly, their expressions frozen in an ambiguous, eternal gaze? Beyond their funerary function, the masks provoke questions about trade, cultural exchange, and technological skill. Jadeite does not occur naturally in the Yucatan. It had to be transported from the highlands of Guatemala or beyond. The masks, therefore, testify to far-reaching networks of trade, labor specialization, and social organization. They also hint at knowledge systems that are now lost, methods of carving and polishing jade with such precision, techniques of burial and ritual, and possibly symbolic languages encoded in the mask's motifs that we have yet to fully decode. Some speculative interpretations suggest that the masks may have had multiple overlapping purposes. Could they have been talismans, not just for the dead, but for the living who honored them, channeling power or protection across generations. Could the faces carved in jade have represented not only the deceased, but ancestral or divine archetypes, embodying qualities that the Maya sought to preserve within their society? And might there be a layer of knowledge now obscured about cosmology, ritual cycles, or human identity embedded within the shapes and patterns of each mask? In contemplating the jade masks of Calakmul today, we are struck by their ability to evoke both intimacy and mystery. Each mask seems to carry a voice from the past, speaking of reverence, power, and mortality, yet refusing to reveal all its secrets. The shimmer of jade, the intricacy of carving, and the careful placement within tombs remind us that these artifacts were created with intent, precision, and belief, an intersection of artistry, spirituality, and human aspiration. Even in the silence of the jungle or the sterile light of a museum display, the masks hold a subtle authority. They compel us to consider what the Maya understood about life, death, and the continuity of identity. What stories, beliefs, and knowledge did these masks embody that we can no longer access directly? How much of Maya cosmology and ritual has been lost, leaving only these luminous, enigmatic faces as witnesses to a vanished world? The jade masks of Calakmul endure as objects of awe, bridging the temporal divide between their creators and us, the modern observers. They invite reflection on the ingenuity, devotion, and spiritual imagination of a civilization whose legacy continues to challenge, inspire, and captivate. And as we trace their contours, admire their polish, and ponder their hidden meanings, we are left with an open question. What remains concealed within these jade visages, and what other mysteries of the Maya, carefully encoded in stone and ritual, are waiting to be rediscovered? From the polished green jade of Calakmul's ceremonial masks, designed to endure and to preserve both identity and spirit, we now journey across the Mediterranean to the island of Crete, to an artifact that continues to confound linguists, archaeologists, and historians alike: the Phaistos Disc. Unearthed in 1908 in the Minoan Palace complex of Phaistos, this circular clay tablet is only about 15 centimeters in diameter, yet it carries within it a mystery that has endured for more than a century. Its surface is stamped with 241 symbols arranged in a spiral, forming a sequence unlike any other in the ancient world, and immediately drawing the attention of scholars who have struggled to decipher its meaning. The disc's symbols are both pictographic and abstract. Human figures, animals, tools, plants, and enigmatic geometric shapes pressed meticulously into the soft clay before it was fired. Unlike other scripts of the Aegean, such as linear A or linear B, which appear in rows on tablets or walls, the Phaistos disc is unique in its spiral, stamped format. Each impression is carefully aligned, suggesting not only precision, but also an intentional, possibly ritualized method of communication. The artifact seems to occupy a space between writing, art, and ceremony, raising immediate questions. Was it a form of record-keeping, a religious object, a mnemonic device, or a code intended for select eyes only? The context of its discovery adds to the enigma. Found deep within the palace ruins, amid storage rooms and other administrative areas, the disc hints at a sophisticated Minoan culture capable of complex social organization and literacy. Yet it stands alone. No other examples of its kind have been found, leaving researchers with a singular puzzle. How could such a distinctive system exist in isolation? Was it a prototype, a specialized tool, or the vestige of a forgotten tradition lost to time? Attempts at decipherment have been exhaustive but inconclusive. Scholars have proposed a variety of interpretations. Some suggest the disc records a hymn or ritual, others posit it as an administrative ledger, while more speculative theories even suggest astronomical or calendrical purposes. Yet the absence of corroborating texts renders these hypotheses tentative. What is clear, however, is that the Minoans possessed the conceptual sophistication to conceive of a symbolic system capable of encoding information in a compact, circular format, an innovation that challenges assumptions about the limits of Bronze Age literacy and technology. The craftsmanship of the disc itself is remarkable. Each symbol appears to have been pressed with a stamp rather than drawn by hand, suggesting a level of standardization and mass production, or at least repeated use for multiple inscriptions. This technique implies an advanced understanding of materials and a deliberate effort to create uniformity, hinting at the disc's significance within Minoan society. Was it a tool of ritual precision, a standardized method of conveying sacred or administrative information, or both? The careful symmetry of the spiral, combined with the variety of symbols, evokes a sense of intention that goes far beyond casual inscription. The Phaistos Disc also provokes broader questions about human ingenuity and the evolution of written communication. How did the Minoans conceive a system that differs so radically from contemporaneous scripts in Mesopotamia or Egypt? Could the disc represent a local experiment in symbolic encoding, an attempt to capture knowledge, ritual, or law in a form that could be physically reproduced and transmitted? Or was it an entirely unique creation, a singular artifact whose meaning was understood only by a select few, lost as their society declined and records disappeared? Speculative interpretations have proposed that the disc's spiral structure may have symbolic significance, reflecting cycles of life, time, or cosmology. Could the arrangement itself carry meaning beyond the individual symbols, a form of protographical encoding where placement is as important as content? Some even suggest connections to astronomical observation, ceremonial recitations, or mnemonic devices intended for oral transmission. The disc, in this sense, becomes more than a written artifact. It becomes a puzzle, a philosophical object, a coded bridge between the practical and the symbolic. What is particularly haunting about the Phaistos Disc is its singularity. It is a message in a bottle from the Bronze Age, intended for a world we can scarcely reconstruct. The absence of comparable artifacts leaves us without keys, forcing modern scholars to approach it with careful speculation, pattern recognition, and informed imagination. Each attempt at interpretation highlights both the sophistication of its creators and the limits of our understanding. In observing the disc today, we are struck by its paradox. It is both ordinary and extraordinary, small in scale, yet monumental in implication. Its carefully impressed symbols demand attention and reflection, suggesting that the Minoans were not only skilled artisans, but also conceptual innovators, capable of creating objects that encode meaning in ways that transcend time. And yet, the disc remains mute, refusing to yield its full message, challenging us to recognize the vastness of what has been lost to history. The Phaistos Disc, in its circular, spiraling form, reminds us that the past is filled with enigmas that resist easy classification or explanation. It invites us to consider what the Minoans knew, what they observed, and what they sought to communicate, and to acknowledge that some knowledge may remain forever beyond our grasp. As we trace the spiral of symbols and ponder the civilization that produced it, we are left with a simple, profound question. What secrets of human thought, ritual, and innovation have been lost to time, and how many other messages, like the Phaistos Disc, remain hidden, waiting to challenge our understanding of the ancient world?